Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And this is part 2 of our M31 U.S. Tank Recovery Vehicle by TAKOM. And that's in 1/35th scale. In our last video, we worked on the lower hull, got the basic lower hull together, the suspension, which is quite complicated, and we also did the tracks. We fitted our link and length tracks. And if you haven't seen that video, it's pretty interesting. Go check that out. For this part, though, we're going to be working on the upper portion of the hull and trying to get this multi-piece hull assembly all fitted in together. So let's go ahead and jump down to the bench and get started. So, did I say fitted in tracks? I think I did. Well, anyway, these tracks that we fitted in our last video, we can go ahead and remove those. Now, they are in two sections. We have the bottom wraparound section that goes around our drive sprocket and our idler, and then we have that top section which we have left separate, which should make it easier to insert that into a vehicle that has the fenders mounted on it, which hopefully we'll get those done. And we'll just go ahead and set these tracks aside somewhere where they're nice and safe, because we shouldn't need them again until it's time to paint them. So in our last video, we finished up these tracks, which we have just removed from the vehicle, since we don't need those in our way. And we're going to start off here in step 6. We have these two side plates to put on, and there is some modifications that we need to do. There are holes that we need to drill, and so we'll get that done. We need to remove a hinge, and more holes on the opposite side. And then, of course, there is the rear screen and where the exhaust comes out and the air cleaners go. We need to put that together. And in step 7, there are some other parts that, well, we'll get to those in a bit. So let's go ahead and take a look at our front fenders, which is part of step 6. And it has these little sides that goes towards the inside, towards the transmission cover. And it's nicely ribbed. It got some nice detail on that, which you don't normally see in a lot of models. So we have both of these to make up, and we will go ahead and make both these fenders up and just set them aside. And let that adhesive dry completely for us. So now we're going to go ahead and work on this side plate here. Now this is the right side. It's the right side of the vehicle, and TAKOM does have some starter holes for us, and we're going to go ahead and drill these 4 holes right here around that viewport at 1 millimeter diameter. And once we have them drilled out, we have a plate that's supposed to mount on the outside that goes over top of this, and that's what these locator holes are for. Now on the opposite side plate, we do have the same 4 holes to drill in 1 millimeter, but then we do have to change our drill bit because we have 2 additional holes that are at 0.6 millimeter, and those are for some brackets that are attached to the outside of the plate. So we'll go ahead and drill those out as well. Now on our right hand plate, there is a hinge detail there that we need to remove because it doesn't allow this plate to fully seat. That's what I'm trying to say. So I am going to use my Tamiya handy router here, and that's the bit that came with it. And we're going to take most of that plastic off, and it makes pretty quick work of it. And once we get that ground down fairly close, we can go ahead and just use a curved blade here. And I like using a curved blade because I'm not cutting into anything else. I can just kind of control that point of contact. And we'll just go ahead and trim off what's left of that hinge. Now we can go ahead and check our fit, and it should line up perfectly with the holes that we've already drilled. And that looks good. So we're ready for some cement. And we're just going to use a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin. And we can just put that in through the holes on the back side here. That'll take and wick right up underneath that plate and secure it for us. And with that done, we'll move on to the other side. And it's the same operation as before. We just have those 4 pre-drilled, well, the drilled holes that we drilled. And we'll just secure it the same way we did the other side. So now we're going to move on to this kind of a box assembly we got going on here. Now this goes on to the rear armor plate, and that's where our exhaust and our air cleaners are going to be mounted. So the way this thing has been designed, we have 2 center angled pieces here where we're putting the glue, and then we'll just go ahead and glue the, or I should say cement, the ends of it in. And just want to make sure everything is pushed down nice and snug, nothing that's going to be in the way of assembling it. And we can go ahead and put our fenders on now. They should be fairly dry, and we don't have to worry about knocking off those little side pieces that we put on. And these parts fit very well. We don't have any issues with these. Both fenders will go on just fine. I just want to make sure that we got enough glue going over the final drive housings here. And we'll also secure it to the hull there. With the Tamiya Extra Thin, it'll wick right in to where we need it to go and secure it. Now these fenders have some little bitty parts that are supposed to go on to them, but we're not going to put them on yet. We're just going to work on the major assemblies. We can always put those little accessories on much later. We don't want to be knocking anything off as we continue on with the major groups here. Now we can start affixing these side plates. Now with this type of armor, they met at a really fine corner. So as you can see, it's angled. So those are like 45-degree angles, except for the very bottom where it sets on top of the sponson above the track there. So we're going to start off attaching these by aligning these corners very carefully with that rear armor plate. And then we're just going to add just enough Tamiya Extra Thin there to allow it to wick right through the joint. And we're going to let that set up a little bit. We're going to hold it in position, let it set up, and then once it has secured itself to the rear plate, we'll go ahead and then glue the rest of it. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that we can eliminate any, or as much as we can, I should say, any gaps that would be at the very corners where those 45-degree angles are going to meet up. Now we're going to do the same process here with the opposite side, trying to make sure as best we can that those 2 plates, the side and the rear, are mated perfectly, and we don't have anything too high or too low, because that would leave gaps in the additional parts that we're going to put on later for, say, the rear engine deck. So we want to be careful and make sure that everything is seated correctly. So taking a look at step 7 here, you can see that we have all these parts that we need to go ahead and put on here, especially on our transmission cover. We're going to do all of the big stuff, but we will leave off the lights and the horn and stuff like that, because we don't want to be knocking that stuff off while we're working with the major plates that are attached all for the upper hull. We can always go back and put that little stuff on later, and that way we don't have to worry about breaking anything. And then in addition, we also have that rear box that we're going to put on for the exhaust and the air cleaners as well. Now we're going to take a look at these sort of a crescent moon shaped part. As you can see, it kind of looks like a mold mismatch, but that is not what that is, so don't sand that out. It's actually supposed to be there. These are the bolt flanges for a three-piece transmission cover, and so we have two of these rib sets that are going to go on, and that is the distinctive look of a really early M3, and I think the very first M4s may have had the three-piece too. I'm trying to remember if they do or not. But we want to make sure that we line these parts up, and they need to be vertical, straight up across and around the transmission cover. And like I say, these represent a 3-section front breastplate or transmission cover. And these are the flanges that bolt those 3 sections together. Now we can go ahead and attach this rear section to the back of the vehicle. And it is very specific in how it goes in, so make sure that you don't put it on upside down. Because if you do, the engine cover or engine deck is not going to fit. So it just sets right down on some locator tabs, and then all we got to do is add a little bit of to me extra thin either side, and that will take and secure it into place for us. And then we can run additional to me extra thin across the straight edge of the back of it. Now when you get this thing seated, that's the way it's supposed to look, and we're ready to go. Okay, so we have an additional plate that goes here, and that's pretty much to give room on the original M3 for the 75mm hole mounted gun. And we're just going to set that into place and cement it, and it fits perfect. Very minimal cleanup of that. But now attached to this piece is a nearly vertical piece of armor, but it leans in towards the glacis and the viewport section for the driver, and I'm not real sure what the angle is. So as you can see, that's kind of where it wants to sit, but if I go ahead and glue it now and it gets really solid, then it will be very difficult to adjust it to close up any gaps when we go to put the front of the vehicle on. So we're just going to kind of head and leave this piece off until we get ready to put all those sections across the front. Alright, so back to our instructions here. Moving on to number 8, and this is where we're going to be attaching these front plates here. But we do need to remove a row of rivets. There are holes that we're going to have to drill in the front armor plate, as well as that angled side piece. It needs some holes drilled in it for some additional parts. Now TAKOM already has some starter holes on the back side, but of course there would be no way to actually drill those holes very easily once they're installed. So we have to do that now, just like we did on the other plates. So the first hole we're going to drill is going to be a 0.6mm hole in the angled side plate at the driver's compartment. And once we get that drilled, we're going to have to go ahead and change over our drill bits because on the front armor plate, we're going to have to drill in 4 1mm holes, and that will be for the mounting of a toolbox that goes onto the front armor plate. And once we have these 4 holes drilled, we'll have to go ahead and switch out a bit again, and this time we're going to be drilling out a 1.2mm hole, which is the mounting position for one of those spare road wheels that's going to be mounted on the front of the vehicle. So yeah, we're switching out a lot of drill bits, but just pay attention to the instructions, and you can't go wrong there. And of course, we do need to make sure that we remove this row of rivets, and that's to kind of clear the way for the front toolbox that gets mounted right onto the outside of this plate. Now I think the toolbox will overlap this line of rivets anyway, but we're going to go ahead and use a 600 grit sanding stick and polish those down. So we do have a small detail for the viewport cover here, and well, you don't really need to put it on because nobody's going to see it, but it is a really small piece. I just went ahead and put it on because, hey, it's in the kit, and I like gluing parts together, I guess. So now that we've got this part ready to go, we can go ahead and install it, and it just kind of snaps right into place. And we'll glue it from the inside, and that'll kind of minimize any of those little shiny spots that we'd have running around on the outside of the plate, which with just a little bit of glue, or cement I should say, out there, it's not going to be that big of a deal. The paint and the primer, or I should say the primer and the paint will cover it up, no problem. So our next sub-assembly to put together is going to be the front Pintle mount that goes right on our transmission cover. And we have some side plates and a center section. And there's also some sort of spreader bar that's going to go underneath. So I do put a little bit of To Me Extra Thin in the hole to kind of hold that piece in place. Hopefully I don't drop it. And then we can just mate up the opposite side. And it'll just, hopefully everything just goes together. And with everything in place, we can go ahead and touch it with the cement. And it's kind of a beefy assembly there. And you got to remember, this being a recovery vehicle, having a front towing pintle allows the driver to actually see where they're placing the vehicle. It's much easier than trying to back something up. So that's a very thoughtful and useful item that's on our recovery vehicle. And then, of course, we need to put our actual towing pintle onto it. It is a little bit of a loose fit, so now the hole that it goes into is kind of a half moon shape. That keeps us from accidentally mounting it upside down. So I just put a little bit of To Me Extra Thin in the hole there, and we'll go ahead and set that into place. So I do kind of want to make sure that it's straight. If it's crooked or off to one side, then that would be, it would kind of look funny. So we don't want it to look funny. So just make sure that you got everything lined up. And then we're going to let that dry a little bit. Now, once everything is nice and secure, we need to locate it between those two ribs, mounting ribs there for the transmission cover. And as you can see right here, I kind of missed it. There are some bolt heads on the inside there that this thing kind of slides around. It slots around them. So we just need to make sure that we've got it where it's lined up correctly. And then we'll just go ahead and cement it into place. Now we do have a small fender support that goes on the right side of the vehicle. So a little touch of cement there will help us tack it into place. And we want to make sure that it's lined up correctly. It does have a nice positive location. And we'll just run the To Me Extra Thin down alongside of it, if I can say that. The important thing here is to make sure that it's not leaning, because you can get it to kind of lean off either forward or backwards. So make sure it's straight. And now we're ready to start assembling all those front armor plates. So the part that we left off before, that triangular shaped side piece of armor, we're going to go ahead and secure it into place. And with that in place, we'll put the lower section of the front armor plate on. And it is tabbed so that it goes in and it sets very nice. No fit issues with it. Now we will push down and align those corners. Now those corners are very important. They come together, and the parts are angled at a 45-degree angle on the inside so that we have a nice sharp edge there. So we want to make sure that we're not leaving any gaps, and all these parts are pushed up together. If you leave a little gap here and a little gap somewhere else, by the time we get around to the side of the vehicle, we're going to have a large gap or a large fit issue. So we don't want that. And see, these really go in nice. The fit on this kit is just amazing for so many parts. So next comes that angled side plate. And this is where we're going to run into a little bit of an issue. So it doesn't really sit and line up with the left side plate that we've already installed, and I'm pretty sure I know why. We'll get to that in a second. So we're going to attach the side that fits really good first, and it's very important that the very top of all these plates are aligned with one another. You don't want one sticking higher than the other. Now, once we get this plate glued up, just on this one side, then we can start looking at some alignment that we need to kind of muscle into place where it meets the side plate of the vehicle itself. Now, in part one of this build series, the sponson plates were kind of bowed down a little bit. And that's the reason why we're kind of having an issue right here. Now, if we put pressure from up underneath, we can kind of press it down into place. And it's very important that this corner here, this little compound corner that we've got going on, is nice and flat and straight right across the top of it. Otherwise, we're going to have a fit issue when it comes time to put on the roof section. So I want to make sure that that is down in and level. And then we can go ahead and we're just going to take a little bit of Tamiya extra thin and secure that corner. And I'm going to hold it. I know. I could try to put a clamp on it, but I think because of the angle of this piece, we might be pushing it out somewhere else. So I'm just going to hold it into place until it tacks up for us and it holds itself at the right level. Now, once that has dried enough, and it dries fairly quick, it just takes a few seconds, we can go ahead and push the plate in and make sure that the seam that goes down on that diagonal is nice and flush. And we'll just run our Tamiya extra thin along that and glue that portion in. And then we can just run it across the bottom, and that plate is nice and secure for us. So always double check your work. Since we're putting so many different plates together, it's very important that they all line up. Take your time with it because you can't really do any sanding across the top of this thing because of the type of angles that the parts are seated on. So I do take the roof section and I just clamp it down on top of the vehicle and allow everything to set up. And there's that compound angle right there that I'm kind of worried about. So I want to make sure that that's nice and flush for the roof. So once everything has dried for us, we can go ahead and remove our clamps. And we'll take those off, get them out of our way, and we can remove our roof section. And we can continue on with the rest of the segments that we need to build up. And that's going to be, let's see here. So we finished 8, except for the really small parts. We've left those off because we don't want to lose those, remember that. And they would be really easy to break off. So we're going to move on to step 9. And with step 9, we have holes that we need to drill again for accessories that are attached to the top of the roof section. And so we will go ahead and take care of that and drill all those holes. And then we can take and look at assembling this. So all of these holes are 1 millimeter, so we don't have to change up any drill bits when we're drilling all these holes here. And I think there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think it's 11 holes or 12 holes that we have to drill in this plate. And they're all indexed, so we don't have to worry about the location. Just drill your hole straight through at a 90-degree angle, and it'll be fine. So now we can start looking at this rear panel that needs to be bent. So we do need to bend this so that it will fit onto the back of the roof section. And it has these molded in angle cuts, and which will allow us to bend it at the right angle. Now we're going to leave the antenna mount off. We can put the other parts on, but the antenna mount is one of them things that we might break off, so we're just going to leave that part off for now. So the first thing I'm going to do when it comes to this rear panel is we're going to use a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin and just put it right down through that fold channel. And that'll help soften the plastic a little bit for us. I really hate for this to snap off. That would be kind of a bad thing. But nothing that we couldn't deal with, but I'd rather not deal with it. So a little bit of that Tamiya Extra Thin, and this is the plastic that TAKOM has used here is kind of a semi-soft type plastic. It melts rather readily, so you do want to not use a whole lot of adhesive. So we're going to check our fit. Now it is keyed and tabbed, so it does have a positive fit, and we just want to make sure that we get the corners lined up. Having one of those corners off would be kind of bad. So I want to start with the center section, and we'll put a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin on it, and then we want to check and make sure that the corner is perfectly lined up. You don't want to put a whole lot of cement on this thing and then find out that you got to take it off. So we'll go ahead and cement the other side of it, and now we can start looking. Once we make sure that we've closed up any gap that might be around the top edge of it there. Now we can start working on one of the wings here. And just put it into place. A little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin. Hold it for a second and make sure that we don't have any gap between the plates. And with that on, it's the same process on the opposite side. Now we're putting a lot of trust into the engineers here because you can't really test fit this. There's no way to hold it together unless you use just a whole lot of tape and what have you. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be okay. So with that done, we can go ahead and attach the hatch here over our 75mm gun. And it just snaps into place. A little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin on the underside to hold it in. And we're in good shape. So we have two ribs here. I believe they're either stiffeners or they might be deflectors. I really don't know why they're there. I think they're just stiffeners. But they do glue in like you would expect. There is a slot for it to go into. And then the second short piece just mates up to it. And this is one of those iconic kind of things that only the M3 has. As far as I know, only the M3 has them. But they go right on, right where you would expect them to. No modifications, a little bit of glue, and we're good to go. Yeah, it looks really good. Lots of detail here. And now we can go ahead and put that viewport cover into place. And it just kind of presses right in. And we're going to glue it from the back side just like we did the hatch. That way we don't have a lot of glue running around the outside of the vehicle. So we have some toolboxes that we need to put on and some vents. And also there's a cover that goes over top of where the gun sight would come up through the roof. So there's a plate that goes there, and we'll put that on. Now these vents are aligned. They've got a cast-in number and stuff on them. So we'll have to deal with that as well as put the toolbox together. So what I decided to do with the vents, now these are going into those holes that we drilled previously, is instead of assembling them the way they want us to do it, I'm going to put the lower housing on first, and then we'll put a little dab of To Me Extra Thin, and then put the cap on it. That way I can align the writing, the cast-in numbers and stuff right where it shows on the instruction. And I imagine that these things were bolted on because of their bolt patterns. They would have been very specific in their alignment. So I kind of want to keep that alignment just the same as it is in the instructions. So that's why I decided to assemble them on the roof instead of putting the vents together and then putting them on, because then it probably wouldn't line up. And now for a toolbox, we have to secure the lid for it, and then it's going to go right where the holes are that we drilled for it. And with it located, all we got to do is to cement it into place, and I'm going to do this from underneath. And that To Me Extra Thin will wick right through those drilled holes and secure it. Now we also have a rather large toolbox that goes right on top of where the 75 gun swivel mount is. The problem with that is it'll probably be in our way because I suspect we're going to have to clamp the roof into place. So we're going to leave that part off for later. So with the roof section ready to be assembled onto the vehicle, we do have some other parts that we need to put on. Now we'll be leaving these little bitty parts off of the fender and everything there. The thing that we can do that front toolbox, and we do need to take care of this front plate and our access hatch, which is where the dummy 75mm gun goes, because that's a main structural part, and that's going to fit right there. And that's going to be, well, our roof is going to go on there too. So we need to go ahead and take care of that mount first. Now we do need to drill some holes in it first, and we need to make sure we get that done before we go ahead and assemble it. So since we're going to be bending and flexing these parts, I really want this to be nice and solid. So we're going to go ahead and glue this up first. We'll make sure that we can give this plenty of time with that front hatch area cemented into the rotating armor section here for the 75mm gun. That way everything will be able to take the stress of if we need to make adjustments and using clamps on it, it won't be bending out of shape here. So with everything glued up, we'll go ahead and we will set this aside and let that dry up for us. So we'll take this opportunity to go ahead and put our toolbox together. And we can go ahead and put that right onto the front of the vehicle, and it goes into the holes that we drilled previously. So it's very important that you get all those holes drilled, otherwise you might have a little bit of a location problem here. So we do have to glue this from the outside because it's very difficult to get inside to do that. So alright, we have this all dry and it's ready to go for our dummy 75mm gun tube, but we're not going to put the gun tube on it yet. We're going to leave that off. We don't want that in our way. We need to get this plate into place here, and it does have a long tab that goes to the inside, but as you can see, it kind of wants to gap at the bottom. So I do have to use my thumb and push up underneath the sponson there to kind of take a little bit of bow out of it so that will all line up for us. That being the case, we're just going to glue up this one side that we can hold into place with our thumb. And run a little bit of TAKOM extra thin along it, and we're going to hold it in place until it tacks up well enough so that it's not going to pull away. And it just takes a few seconds, but it's a curved surface. You really can't do much clamping on it, so it's just easier to hold. As you can see there, on the inside, it kind of springs away a little bit, so this part is slightly under tension. So we'll have to hold it right where it needs to go, and then we'll glue it up. And this one we can reach from the inside, which is actually the best way to do it. Otherwise, I'd probably have cement all over the front of this thing. And again, we're just going to hold it so it doesn't spring away. And the TAKOM extra thin sets up really quick with this type of polystyrene, so it's going to be fine. Just takes a few seconds, and it's really ready to go. And then we'll just run us a little bit more cement around the bottom, and that'll take care of it for us. And finally, it is time to put the roof on. Well, we've been working towards this for a while, and it is a nice snug fit, and everything is keyed. So if we did everything we were supposed to do up to this point, then everything should close up fairly well. Now, I do expect to have some gaps, but, you know, that's kind of what you get sometimes. But it really fits better than I thought it was going to. So I'm kind of happy with that. So what we need to do is clamp it down into place so it doesn't move on us. So I'm just going to use these sliding clamps here, and we just need to put enough pressure to hold the joints together. And if there is an alignment issue, we'll have to deal with that as it comes. So once we get both sides clamped down, we can check and make sure that everything is aligned correctly. All of those little corners meet. And we do need to bring these sides in a little bit, just to close up any gaps that are there. Now once we do, we can start doing some adding to our TAKOM extra thin, and we'll just do a little bit at a time. Now right over the driver's port there, viewport, we do need to kind of push it together a little bit, and that could be bowed out because of the clamping pressure, but it goes together fine. Just pay attention to each and every one of these seams as you glue them together, and that way you won't have any issue. So we'll just go around the entire top of the vehicle and continue to glue all these seams together. Easy peasy. Well, all right, that's going to wrap up part 2. And we did get the majority of the upper hull together. Now, we still got our engine deck to do, so we'll get to that in the next video. But the major concern is getting all these multiple pieces here all fitted together so that we don't have any gaps. Now, there are a couple of little hairline gaps here and there, but one there and I think one here on the corner, but which we'll take care of with just a little bit of that perfect plastic putty, which is really good for being able to fill small areas up, and really easy to clean up. So we'll take care of that. So special thanks to all my subscribers. Because of you guys, I keep making these videos, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Now, if you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I hope today earned your subscription. And don't forget to give me a like if you guys enjoyed the video. So guys, also leave me a comment at the end of how you think the build's progressing. I always love to hear from you. So with that, you guys stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.